Hi, boys and girls. I'm going to do a quick review on Pollyanna, and then I'm going to read chapter 8 in this video. Remember that Pollyanna is a little girl who has lost her mother and her father, and she has just recently come to live with her Aunt Polly. Now, remember, Aunt Polly has her duty in society to take care of Pollyanna, even though, remember, she really doesn't want her. But she has allowed her to come and stay with her. The other characters we have met so far is Miss Nancy, who is a servant in Aunt Polly's house, and Old Tom, who is the gardener, and Thomas, who drives the carriage to go pick up Pollyanna at the train station with Nancy. We have learned that Pollyanna, although she is an exceptional child, has had to be punished several times, and Aunt Polly hasn't been very successful at that because Pollyanna, because she always looks at the positive side of things, doesn't even realize she's being punished. In chapter 7, we read about how it was so hot in the little attic room that Pollyanna went outside the window and slept on the roof of the sun parlor down below. And we learned that it scared Aunt Polly, and she tried to punish Pollyanna by making her sleep in the bedroom with her. And of course, that just excited Pollyanna even more. So today I'm going to read chapter 8, and it is entitled Pollyanna Pays a Visit. Life at the Harrington homestead settled into something like order, though not exactly the order that Miss Polly had prescribed. Pollyanna sewed, practiced, read aloud, and studied cooking in the kitchen, but she did not give to any of these things quite so much time as had been planned. She had more time also to just live. Every afternoon from 2 until 6 o'clock with hers to do with as she liked, provided she did not do certain things prohibited by Aunt Polly. It is a question perhaps whether this leisure time was given as a relief to Pollyanna from work or as a relief to Aunt Polly from Pollyanna. Certainly as the July days passed, Miss Polly declared many times, "What an extraordinary child!" And certainly the reading and sewing lessons left her each day dazed and exhausted. Nancy feared better. She was not dazed or exhausted. Indeed, Wednesdays and Saturdays came to be special days for her. There were no children in the neighborhood for Pollyanna to play with. This, however, did not seem to disturb Pollyanna in the least. "I don't mind it at all," she exclaimed to Nancy. "I'm happy just to walk around and see the streets and the houses and watch the people. I just love people. Don't you, Nancy?" "Well, not all of them," retorted Nancy. Almost every afternoon, Pollyanna begged for an errand to run so she might take a walk. On these walks, she often met the man. To herself, Pollyanna always called him the man, even if she met a dozen other men on the same day. The man often wore a long black coat and a high silk hat. His face was clean-shaven and rather pale, and his hair was somewhat gray. He walked erect and rapidly, and he was always alone, which made Pollyanna sorry for him. Perhaps this was why she spoke to him one day. "How do you do, sir? Isn't this a nice day?" she said cheerily as he approached him. The man glanced about him and then stopped uncertainly. "Did you speak to me?" he asked in a sharp voice. "Yes, sir," beamed Pollyanna. "It's a nice day, isn't it?" "Huh? Oh, And he grunted and he strode away. Pollyanna laughed. He was such a funny man, she thought. The next day she saw him again. "It isn't quite as nice as yesterday, but it's very nice. Pretty nice," she called out cheerfully. "Huh? Oh, grunted the man, as before, and once again Pollyanna laughed. The third time Pollyanna spoke to him, the man stopped abruptly. "See here, child, who are you, and why are you speaking to me every day?" "I'm Pollyanna Whittier, and I thought you looked lonesome. I'm so glad you stopped. Now we're introduced. Only, I don't know your name." "Well, of all the—" The man did not finish his sentence, but strode on faster than ever. Pollyanna looked after him with a disappointed droop to her lips. "This was only half an introduction. I don't know his name yet," she murmured, as she proceeded on her way. Pollyanna was carrying calf's foot jelly to Miss Snow. Miss Harrington always sent something to Miss Snow once a week. She said it was her duty since Miss Snow was poor and sick and a member of her church. Miss Polly did her duty by Mrs. Snow on Thursday afternoon, not personally, but through Nancy. Today, Pollyanna had asked to go in her place. "I'd love to do it, Nancy." "Well, you won't after you've done it once," predicted Nancy. "Well, why not?" "Because nobody does. If folks weren't sorry for her, nobody would go near her. She's that cantankerous. I pity her daughter who has to take care of her." "But why, Nancy?" Nancy shrugged. "Well, it's just that nothing is ever right for Miss Snow. If it's Monday, she says she wishes it was Sunday. And if you take her jelly, you're sure to hear that she wanted chicken. And if you bring her chicken, she'd want lamb." "Why, what a funny woman," laughed Pollyanna. "I think I shall like to go to see her. She must be so different. I like different folks." "Well, I hope Miss Snow's different for the sake of the rest of us," Nancy finished grimly. Pollyanna was thinking of these remarks as she turned in at the gate of the shabby little cottage. Her eyes sparkled at the prospect of meeting this different Miss Snow. A pale-faced, tired-looking young woman answered her knock at the door. "How do you do?" began Pollyanna politely. "I'm from Miss Polly Harrington, and I'd like to see Miss Snow, please." "Well, you're the first one that ever liked to see her," muttered the little girl under her breath, but Pollyanna did not hear this. The girl had turned and was leading the way through the hall to a door at the end of it. In the sick room, Pollyanna blinked a little before she could see in the gloom, and then she saw, dimly outlined, a woman half sitting up in the bed across the room. Pollyanna walked towards her. "How do you do, Miss Snow? Aunt Polly has sent you some calf's foot jelly." "Dear me, jelly!" murmured a fretful voice. "Of course, I'm very much obliged, but I was hoping it would be lamb broth today." Pollyanna frowned. "Why, I thought it would be chicken you wanted when folks brought you jelly," she said. "What?" The woman turned sharply. "Nothing," apologized Pollyanna. "It doesn't really make any difference. It's only that Nancy said it was chicken you wanted when we brought you jelly, and lamb broth when we brought you chicken. Maybe it was the other way around." The sick woman pulled herself up in bed. "Well, Miss Impertinence, who are you?" she demanded, and Pollyanna laughed. "Oh, that isn't my name, Miss Snow, and I'm so glad it isn't. I'm Pollyanna Whittier, Miss Polly Harrington's niece, and I've come to live with her, and that's why I'm here with the jelly." The sick woman fell back on a pillow. "Very well, thank you. Your aunt is very kind, but my appetite isn't very good this morning, and I was wanting lamb." She stopped suddenly. "I didn't sleep a wink last night." "Oh, dear, I wish I didn't," sighed Pollyanna, placing the jelly on the little stand and seating herself comfortably in the nearest chair. "You lose so much time sleeping. Don't you think so?" "Lose time sleeping?" explained the woman. "Yes. when you might be just living, you know? It seems a pity you can't live nights too. Once again, the woman pulled herself erect in bed. Well, if you ain't the amazing one, she cried. Go pull up the curtain, she directed. I should like to know what you look like. Pollyanna rose to her feet. Oh, dear. Well, then you'll see my freckles, won't you? She sighed as she went to the window. And just when I was so glad it was dark and you couldn't see 'em. There. Now you can... Oh! She broke off excitedly as she turned back to the bed. I'm so glad you wanted to see me, because now I can see you. They didn't tell me you were so pretty. Me? Pretty? Scoffed the woman. Why, yes. Didn't you know it? Cried Pollyanna. Your eyes are so big and dark, and your hair's all dark and curly, and you've got red cheeks. Why, Miss Snow, you are pretty. Just let me show you, she exclaimed, skipping over to the bureau and picking up a hand mirror. On the way back to the bed, she stopped. If you don't mind, I'd like to fix your hair just a little before I let you see it, she proposed. May I, please? Why, I suppose so, if you want to, permitted Miss Snow. Oh, thank you. I love to fix people's hair, said Pollyanna, reaching for a comb. I won't do much today, of course, but someday I'm going to take it all down and have a perfectly lovely time with it. For 5 minutes, Pollyanna worked swiftly. Meanwhile, the sick woman was, in spite of herself, beginning to tingle with excitement. There, panted Pollyanna, plucking a flower from a vase nearby and tucking it into the dark hair. Now we're ready to be looked at. And she held out the mirror in triumph. Huh, grunted the sick woman, eyeing her reflection severely. It won't last, with me tossing back and forth on the pillow as I do. Of course not, and I'm glad, too, nodded Pollyanna cheerfully, because then I can fix it again. Anyway, I should think you'd be glad it's black. Black shows up so much nicer on a pillow than yellow hair like mine does. Miss Snow dropped the mirror and turned irritably. You wouldn't be glad for black hair nor anything else if you had to lie here all day. Pollyanna frowned thoughtfully. Why, it would be kind of hard to be glad about things, wouldn't it? She wondered aloud. Be glad about things when you're sick in bed all your days? Well, I should say it would, retorted Miss Snow. If you don't think so, just tell me something to be glad about. So to Miss Snow's amazement, Pollyanna sprang to her feet and clapped her hands. Oh, goody! That'll be a hard one, won't it? I've got to go now, but I'll think and think all the way home, and maybe the next time I come, I can tell it to you. I've had a lovely time. Goodbye, she called as she tripped through the doorway. Well, I never. Now what does she mean by that? Asked Miss Snow, staring after her visitor. By and by, she picked up the mirror. That little thing has got a knack with hair, she muttered. But what's the use? She sighed, dropping the little mirror into the bedclothes. Now we know what Pollyanna meant by coming up with something to be glad about, but Miss Snow doesn't know. So we'll see what happens in chapter 9.